What is going on, YouTube? The Assist Man, and I'm coming back at you guys with another Borderlands 3 YouTube video. Inside of this video, man, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and give you guys my trialed and tested Amara the Siren build. Now, I know that there are a ton of different, theory crafting videos and posts on forums and stuff like that, and there's a ton of different builds on YouTube stating, oh, this build is the best, my build is the best, this build is the best. Guys, at the end of the day, no build is actually going to be the best unless it's the best for the way that you want to play. It needs to be the best for your specific playstyle. A lot of people are deeming the best, Amara skill tree build to be the brawl skill. Well, then you actually have to like using melee, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people pick the siren because it's been a staple in Borderlands history as kind of like a mage or a caster and somebody that could do cool things with like magical abilities and things. And yeah, so a lot of people that play the siren don't want to play that way. But at the same time, I do applaud the game and the developers for giving, the classes different ways to play the game and different ways to play it, whether it be ranged or melee. But with that being said, like I just got done saying, this build is going to be focused on crowd control and elemental effect damage. Basically, the bread and butter, the heart and soul of the Siren class. So if you guys do enjoy this video, man, don't forget to hit that thumbs up like button. And if you have not subscribed to my channel and you're looking forward to more Borderlands 3 content, please hit that subscribe button. So anyway, man, without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into it. Now, like I just got done saying, in Borderlands 3, a lot of builds are on the internet. A lot of builds are on YouTube. One, thing I see on all these builds is that these builds were actually made before the game actually released in its final state. They are builds from like the beta, the alpha. They're builds from like the early test preview from weeks ago. None of these builds I seen are with level 50 characters that have actually played through these builds since the game came out a few days ago. As you can see on the bottom of my screen, I am on Xbox One X and I am level 50. I've been playing the game like no tomorrow for the past couple days since it came out, and you can see I already have my Guardian ranks unlocked. And you could also see that I am level 50. So I've been playing through this build. I've been testing out tons of different builds. I've probably respec'd my character at least 20 times already. And by far, without a doubt, I feel personally for me, this is the best Amara the Siren build in the game for the way I like to play. Now, like I said, if you're one of those people that likes to play melee, click off the video. This isn't for you. This is not a brawl build. This is a crowd control, elemental effect damage master. That's what this build is. So let's go ahead and get into it. I babbled on enough, but let's go ahead and get into the skill tree, and I'll show you guys what I took and why I took it. So first off, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with the orange tree, the phase grasp tree. And before I go into the actual action skills, we're going to go ahead and talk about the points, where you're going to put them. So start off at the top of the orange tree. You want to put 5 points into Anima. Amara's status effects deal increased damage over time and have increased duration. Her action skill status effect deals further increased damage. The current effect, if you have 5 points into it, you will get 20% more status effect damage, 100% more status effect duration, and 40% more action skill status effect damage. Now, with each one of these skills, I'm going to tell you what they mean, because a lot of these are very, very vague, and a lot of people don't know what they mean, and to be completely honest with you, I don't even know what some of them mean. But for this one here, status effect damage is basically a status effect and how much damage you will do. So for instance, when you electrocute an enemy with shock, when you ignite and burn an enemy with fire, that is a status effect. So having more status effect damage will increase the damage of those attacks. Status effect duration, exact same thing. When you apply, radiation to an enemy and it has the radiation poison, or if you apply fire to an enemy and they're burning, the 100% status effect duration will double the amount of time that those status effects stay on the enemy. Now, where it says action skill status effect damage, depending on what action skill you're using, and depending on the status effect of that action skill, it will make it do 40% more damage, the status effect damage of that. Next, we're going to go ahead and take at the top of the top line of the orange tree is infusion. And this is one that's kind of really weirdly worded, and a lot of people don't know how this works. So let me tell you. It says convert a portion of damage dealt by Amara's weapons into her action skill element. What this basically does is it procs a second hit on every hit you do with your gun as a secondary hit for 40% of your action skill element. What that basically means, if you have, like I do, fire as your action skill element, if you hit an enemy for 1,000 damage with your gun, it will then proc a secondary tick of damage for 40% of the damage you did as the element of your action skill. So, I just got done saying, if I had fire, which I do, as my action skill element, if I hit an enemy for 1,000, I'm going to do 40% more damage to them as a secondary tick of damage based upon my action skill element, which is fire. So if I shoot an enemy for 1,000, I do 1,000 damage, and then a second later, or roughly at the same time, I'm going to do another 400 damage to that enemy as fire damage, which can set them ablaze. Because 40% of my action skill element, and my action skill element is fire. Now, if your action skill element is corrosive, it would be corrosive. If your action skill element is lightning, it would be lightning. But it is going to do 40% more damage as a secondary tick, depending on how much damage you did. So if you only did 50 damage, 40% of 50 is only 8. So you're only going to do 8 more damage. But if you did, 50,000 damage, 40% of that is going to be 20,000 per hit. When you have a fast firing rate of fire gun, this is going to make a big difference, and it's a must-have in this build. All right, let's go. We're not going to put any points into steady hands because weapon handling and accuracy is not really something that we need for this class. Second line, Tempest. Amara deals increased elemental damage. Shock damage is further increased. At maxed out 5 points, you're going to get 30% more elemental damage and 20% more shock damage. This, once again, gotta have it. It's a non-negotiable because we're doing all elemental damage. You should never not have an elemental gun in your hands. This build is focused all around elemental damage, so by getting 30% more elemental damage for all elements is amazing. And then on top of that, you're going to get 20% more shock damage. So when you're doing damage with a shotgun, you're actually going to be doing 50% more damage with the shock lightning type gun. So, gotta have it. Passive ability of Illuminated Fist, we don't need this because we're not doing any melee damage, so don't put any points here. Wildfire, extremely important once again. Whenever Amara applies a status effect to an enemy, it has a chance to spread to a nearby enemy. And the enemy that spreads it initially, say for instance there's a pack of 10 enemies. You hit one enemy, and you put a burning fire effect on them. That enemy could then spread it to the enemy next to them, and then that enemy that it was just spread to could spread it to the other 3 enemies around. That's why it's called a wildfire. It just keeps, moving and moving and spreading and spreading. This is extremely important, and at 5 points, you will have a 40% chance to spread your status effect. Like I said, this build is all about elements and elemental damage. You will be doing a minimum of 2 elements with every single tick and hit of damage with your guns. So you will have a 40% chance to spread every status effect you have on an enemy and do damage to all the nearby surrounding enemies around them and have them spread them as well. Extremely important. Let's go ahead and go down to the next thing. Dread. Amara's gun damage is increased for a few seconds after an enemy is grasped. Whenever any player kills a grasped enemy, their current weapon is instantly reloaded. This is extremely important because in this build, we are using phase lock. And every time we grasp an enemy, we will do 15% more damage to them after we grasp them. On top of that, if you kill the enemy, your magazine will be instantly reloaded, which means you could shoot a lot more bullets. And it goes well with team synergy, just in case you don't kill the enemy and your teammate does, their magazine will be instantly reloaded. Let's go down a little bit more. Deep Well. Amara gains increased magazine size with elemental weapons. You get 20% extra magazine size with elemental weapons. You should have this on because we will always be using elemental weapons. So an extra 20% magazine size is amazing. Allows you to do more DPS. Let's look at this one. Indiscriminate. Amara's bullets that damage enemies have a chance to ricochet and deal decreased damage to other nearby enemies. Ricochet chance and damage are increased if the target is currently affected by phase grasp or stillness of mind. Its current effect, if you have 3 out of 3 points in it, you get 30% ricochet chance, each bullet doing minus 50% damage, so half the damage of the original bullet. But if they're on the action skill and they're grasped, you have a 60% chance to ricochet a bullet to other enemies at only minus 25% damage. This is a skill that is amazing because, like I said, we're building this all around phase grasp. We're always going to have enemies phase grasp, so we're always going to be doing ricochet damage to them. Now, Cathedris, or am I even saying that correctly? Catharus. It says, whenever Amara triggers an elemental effect on an enemy, when the enemy dies, the enemy explodes, dealing her attuned element damage along with any other element that is currently afflicted upon that enemy. This skill has a short cooldown. The reason why I did not take this skill is because, number one, it doesn't do a lot of damage, but it does a decent amount of damage. But most importantly, and number two, is that the explosion around the enemy that goes off is actually not that big. And unless you have enemies like really, really tightly grouped up, which they're not that often, it's kind of a waste, and there are better options. So I would not take any points into this, and I did not. Going down next, sustainment. A lot of people are going to say this is probably one of the best things in the game, and I agree with you, it probably is. Amara gains lifesteal whenever she deals elemental damage with her weapon. We're always dealing elemental damage, so you're probably questioning yourself, why are you not taking this? Because even with 1 point, you get 4% lifesteal as damage dealt with your elemental weapons. Well, the reason why is because this build is all around burning things down and controlling things. I don't die that often, and when I do die, I can get a second win probably in like the next 2 or 3 seconds, so it's not that big of a deal for me. I'd rather spec more into offensive-related skills that are going to let me kill things before they kill me. So that's why I don't have any points in sustainment. This one here as well, this is one that's kind of confusing to me when I said some of these things I don't even know what they do, and this is one of them. Conflux. It says whenever Amara applies a status effect to an enemy, she gains a chance to randomly electrocute, ignite, or melt that enemy. If you put 5 points into this, I think it's a 35% chance because I tried it out. The problem is it doesn't show you or tell you how much damage you're going to be doing when you randomly electrocute, ignite, or melt that enemy. It's really, really hard to see numbers in this game, especially when you have a lot of ticks and damage numbers going off at once. So as far as I tried to test this and see, I couldn't see it. There was just way too much going on the screen, and I didn't know which was which. But since it doesn't say how much damage this actually does, I don't know how much damage it does, so it didn't seem like that great of a skill to take, so I did not take it. If anybody could confirm or deny how much damage Conflux does in the comment section, man, let me know, because when I was using it, it seemed to spread the status effect, or it seemed to give the status effect to the enemy, but it seemed to do very, very little damage, and it didn't seem like it was worth it. Finally, we have our capstone at the bottom, Forceful Expression. Amara's guns deal bonus elemental damage based on her action skill element. You get 18% of damage dealt as bonus elemental damage. Going back and saying our element for this is going to be fire. That means no matter what gun that you are using, no matter what gun, you are going to be getting an additional 18% more damage dealt as fire damage with this. That's great. Anytime you get an 18% more damage extra, you got to take it. Now, let's go ahead and go into the blue tree before we actually get into, all the other stuff. So now, the blue tree, and let's just go to the green tree real fast. There's no points in here at all. 0 points. Not a single point in the green tree. That's why I said the blue tree. We're skipping right over the green tree. Let's go to the blue tree. This is another bread and butter tree. Do harm. I don't have any points into this. I'm getting 1 point into it by having a class mod that's on, but I don't have any points into this because it says for every stack of rush consumed, Amara's action skill damage is temporarily increased. We are using phase lock or phase grasp, and it does no damage. Phase grasp does not do any damage. I wish it did do some damage. It should do some damage, but it doesn't in the current state of the game. So by using do harm, it's not going to do anything at all for you because our action skill does not do any damage. So let's go into the second thing. Fast hands. Put 3 points in this. Amara's reload speeds, weapon swap speed, and mode switch speed are improved. I don't care about the weapon swap speed and mode switch speed because I don't really care about that. But the reload speed is amazing. Having an extra 19% reload speed and fire rate are some of the most important things in this game. So by having any, take it. Next thing, Violent Tapestry. Applying a status effect grants Amara a stack of rush. Activating her action skill consumes all stacks of rush. For every stack of rush consumed, Amara's status effect chance is temporarily increased. Although we don't really need this, we have to put some points to fill out the top to move to the second row. It's good to have a little bit extra though, which basically means you can have 10 max rush stacks, each doing 1.2% per stack, so this basically gives you a 12% higher chance to apply a status effect to an enemy. Basically what that means, if you hit them with a fire gun to make them burn, if you hit them with a corrosive gun to make them melt, and if you hit them with a shock gun to make them be electrocuted, you have a higher percent chance of doing that. While it's not needed, the little bit extra 12% chance is good to have. Let's go to the second row. Alacrity. Amara gains increased reload speed for every stack of rush. After consuming rush stacks, his bonus is increased for a few seconds. Once again, not something we really need in this build due to the fact that we can get extra reload speed in the form of class mods and mods on things as well as guardian rank. So by taking something like this here that we can get a lot of, in the future with guardian rank, it's kind of a waste, but we had an extra point, we had to put it somewhere. And although it is good to have, a little bit extra reload speed, because you're basically going to be getting, if you have 10 stacks of rush on you, you're going to be getting an extra 4% reload speed like all the time and 6% reload speed after you use your action skill for 8 seconds. Let's go to the next thing. This one is pretty important. Transcend. Put 3 out of 3 points here. Amara gains increased accuracy and critical hit damage for a few seconds after activating her action skill. The good thing about this is it doesn't say you have to do damage with her action skill, because Phase Grasp does not do damage. You just have to activate it. And after you activate it for 12 seconds, you're going to get 38% more accuracy, which is okay. But the big thing is 27% more critical hit damage. That is pretty amazing. You definitely want to take it. Now, this is another extremely important part of this build is Restless. I currently have 8 out of 5 points in here because I have a class mod equipped that gives me 3 more. But basically what it does is it gives you increased action skill cooldown rate. Currently with 8 points in it, it's 40% more. If you only had 5, it would be 25%. This is just going to make it so your action skill comes back 25% faster. You want to have your action skill up as much as possible so you can proc all the different things that comes with it. The next thing that we have a point into is called Ascendant. It says all action skill augments gain increased effects. What this basically does is it increases things for each one of your action skills. The only one that we're really using in here is Stillness of Mind. And honestly, it's not that important, but it's really great to put 1 point into this anyway, because it does... First of all, it's only 1 point. You kind of need to put it in there to go to the next section, but it does actually increase the differences and the things that all of your action skills and action skill augments and elements do. Next on the next row, From Rest. Amara gains improved fire rate and charge time. I have 2 points into this, and what this basically does is at 2 points, it's going to give you 8% increased fire rate and 34% increased charge speed. Once again, extremely good. Fire rate is one of the most important DPS deciding factors in any game, and by having more fire rate, you're going to do a lot more damage per second. And charge speed is good if you're using a gun that needs to charge up. You're going to be able to fire it way faster. Now, Laid Bare. This is something I would really love to use because it's freaking amazing. But unfortunately, you can't, because it says enemies take increased damage from all sources for a few seconds after being damaged by Amara's action skill. Well, going back to what I said a few times in this video, Phase Grasp does not damage enemies. It's strictly meant as a crowd control ability. I would love if it did damage enemies like in Borderlands 2. Maybe they'll change it, I have no idea, but as of right now, it doesn't. So this skill will not or never proc if you're using Phase Grasp with no damaging augments on it. So it's just a waste. So no points there, unfortunately. The next thing, this might be probably one of the best skills we have, is called Wraith. Amara gains increased gun damage. This effect is increased after she activates her action skill for a few seconds. I have 4 points into it instead of 3 because I have a class mod on, so this is giving me 26.6% extra gun damage 100% of the time at all times. After I activate my Phase Grasp, for the next 8 seconds, I get an additional 26.6% gun damage, which basically means 26.6 times 2 and added together is going to be 53.2. So 53.2% more gun damage for 8 seconds after using your action skill, and 26.6 more 100% of the time, no matter what you're doing, is amazing. One of the best skills, you gotta take it. Next, I have 2 points into Remnant. When Amara kills an enemy with a gun or action skill, which we're not doing action skills, but we are killing a lot with our guns, she creates a homing projectile that seeks out a new enemy, dealing her action skill elemental damage. Any overkill damage is added to the projectile's damage. I have 2 points in this. Currently, it does 1,301 damage, but that number is multiplied by added effects and other things like that, so it actually does do a lot more damage. This is really, really cool, because when you kill an enemy with your gun, which you should be doing all the time, because this build is focused around elemental chance, elemental damage, spreading elements, phase locking enemies to crowd control them so you can easier shoot them to actually apply elemental effect damage to them and have it spread. You're going to be killing all the enemies with your gun. So these balls are going to be coming out tremendously all the time, attaching to enemies, doing a ton more damage. I'm going to show you guys some gameplay of this as we go along here in a moment. I just want to get done with the rest of the skill tree. No points into Awakening, no points into this, and no points into the green tree, which brings you to the 3 augments and action skill things you want to use. Number 1, action skill. This is what you're going to be wanting to use. Ties that bind. It is phase grasp, but enemies near the grasp target are linked, and any damage dealt to a linked target is shared between all other linked targets. So basically, when you phase grasp an enemy, it will actually chain all the targets next to it, and no matter which one of those chain targets you hit, 35% of the damage you do to the enemy you're shooting will be transferred and linked to all the other targets that have the chain on them. This is amazing for burning things down and doing AoE damage, and it applies all those different status effects as well to all those different targets that we're going to be doing from all of our different status effect procs things we have. It's amazing. Next, let's look at the action skill Augment, Stillness of Mind. It basically says enemies damaged by Amara's action skill become phase locks until their damage or duration end. And then it says, if Amara targets an enemy with phase grasp, which we are using with Ties That Bind, all enemies near the grasp target become phase locked. So not only will they become chained and take 35% damage, but they will also all become phase locked. You could literally CC and crowd control an entire room of enemies with this thing. I hit an enemy one time and all the other enemies were close, and I phase locked like 8 enemies in the air at once and melted them all down within a second with my gun with all my elemental effect damage. And then last but not least, we have the action skill element. With Amara, you're able to change your action skill to all different types of elements depending on what trees you have unlocked. But in my opinion, by far, and I've tested all of them, the fire is the best. So it says converts Amara's action skill to incendiary damage, which is soul fire. You want to be using this one. The reason I say fire is the best is that most of the enemies in this game are going to have some kind of health bar, which is the red bar. Most of the enemies. I seem to encounter a bigger percentage of enemies that have red health bars than anything else. So you will always be doing more damage to them because you have your action skill element created to fire. Now, although our action skill is not actually doing any damage, our perks are, like our skills, like this one here, Infusion. You're converting a portion of your damage dealt by your weapon into her action skill element. Like I said earlier, this is going to tick for an extra 40% damage as fire, which means you're going to be ticking down red health bar enemies constantly. So, there's definitely way more health enemies in this game as far as fire goes. Make sure you're using fire as your action skill element. And now I'm going to get into some gameplay to show you guys what to do. Now, before that, though, I do want to talk about elemental damage on your guns. Since you are already going to be applying a ton of fire damage just with your action skill element and your skill tree, do not use a fire weapon. Remember I said in the beginning of this video, you're always going to be applying 2 status effects at once because you're always going to be applying fire no matter what by having this, and then whatever the other element on your weapon is, you're always going to be applying that. So there's no reason to use a fire weapon if you're always going to be doing fire. Do not use a fire weapon. Your best weapon you can probably use will be a shock electrocute weapon. The reason why is because if you look at the skill tree right here of Tempest, we not only get an extra 30% elemental damage with all elements, but we get a bonus extra 20% shock damage. So if you're using a shock weapon, you're going to do 20% more. Now, shock is good for a lot of different enemies. I would probably be using shock weapons and then applying shock to kill shields really, really quickly. And it does some damage to armor as well, not as much as corrosive, but then you're also going to get that fire. So if you use a shock weapon, you're going to be doing shock damage and fire damage 100% of the time at all times to all the enemies. You're doing 2 elemental effects at once, and you're spreading those elemental effects to all other enemies around. Now, personally, right now, I'm using a corrosive weapon because the gun I have right now is a corrosive gun, and I really, really like this gun, so that's what I'm using. So, that basically is it. As far as when it comes to when you get Guardian ranks unlocked, that's all up to you. That's personal preference. Obviously, I try to get gun damage, gunfire rate, and critical damage as much as I can, but it's all up to you the way you want to spec that out, you know, for other characters. But this basically is the build. This is the skill tree. I'm going to show it to you guys one more time. All the points in the orange you could see on the screen. There are 0 points in the green tree, so don't worry about the green tree. And then 0 points in the green tree, and here is the blue tree. 2 points here, 1 point here, 3 points here, 5 here, 1 here, 2 here. You get the gist of it. You can see on the screen everything I'm using. This build is absolutely amazing. Like I said, it's all about crowd controlling enemies with phase grasp to go ahead and shoot them faster and apply more elemental effect damage that spreads and burn and melt everything down. And it works tremendously good. Now, let's go ahead and do... as you could see, just to let you know, like I said before, I am level 50. This is level 50 gameplay, and this is not in normal mode. This is in True Vault Hunter mode as well. So these are level 50 True Vault Hunter mode enemies. Let's just go ahead and find some packs of enemies or something so I could just show you guys some of the gameplay of it and show you exactly how it works. Hopefully we can find some enemies soon. Alright, so here's some gameplay. I'm going to show you basically how it works. I'm using a corrosive gun, but like I said, every single time we do damage with our gun, we will be doing fire damage as well. So I'm going to be doing corrosive and fire damage. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's phase lock that, and look at that. You phase lock this enemy, and all the other enemies around it become phase locked as well, crowd controlling all of them, and then you see those orange chains as well. That means that they are linked, so any damage you do to that linked enemy will spread between all the other linked enemies as well. Obviously, I didn't shoot anything there because I just wanted to show you guys. So now let's go ahead and burn and melt everything down. Start off with this guy here. Look at the way this is a level 49 flamethrower heavy who's actually resistant to my fire damage, and he still got burned down really, really quickly. All those other enemies just melted because they were chain linked and phase grasp, so they couldn't even do anything. Let's go back up to this enemy over here. Frostbite heavyweight. Look at the fire. Look, even though I'm using a corrosive gun, just look how much fire damage I'm doing. It's just ridiculous. Phase lock that guy. There's the ball that comes out. I'm going to show you guys. Hopefully I don't die. It hits an enemy right there. Every time you kill an enemy, that remnant ball will just come out, mop things up. Look at how fast everything is just melting. Melting. Let's go ahead and go up to a few more enemies over here. Phase rest this guy. Look at all those chains. Look at that. Everything's just dying that was linked. 2 balls came out at once because we had multiple enemies linked and phase grasped at the exact same time. This build just does tons and tons and tons of AoE damage, DOTs, burst damage, you name it, it has it all. It just destroys stuff, like, ridiculously. So, I hope you guys did enjoy this video, man. That's just some quick gameplay of me showing you basically how it all works, how fast things get melted, and so on and so forth. What I want to know from you guys is that if you have used this build, or if you're going to use this build and you did use it, leave a comment down below and let me know how you like it. Let me know in the comment section if you use the build, how you like it, are you doing more damage with it, how do you like the gameplay, the synergy, the whole entire nine. If you guys did enjoy this video, I know it was a longer one, but I wanted to try to be as in-depth as possible, you know, and say everything I could possibly say and try to tell you what all the stuff does and the reasoning behind I'm using it. So I know it was a longer video, but if you guys did enjoy it, man, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up like button. And if you have not subscribed to my channel and you enjoy the content, I'm going to be having lots more Borderlands 3 content coming up very, very shortly. Please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well. Do not forget. So anyway, YouTube, this is the Assist Man, and until next time, I am out.